Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host of Fiberchats. If you guys new to my channel, consider subscribing. There is a lot of interviews with different fiber artists that I do here, and I hope you like it and leave the comment of who you want me to interview next. And today my guest is Jen from the Stitching Witch. Hi, Jen.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
So this, I stumbled on your account on Instagram, and I think Cairo, whom I interviewed, also pointed me in your direction. So I promise we'll talk about knitting, but I must ask about the witch part first.
Yeah.
So when we chat, you told me that you believe in a lot of, like, you're a very spiritual person and you believe in a lot of different things. Do you have to pick a deity in the any given day? Like, how do you decide between the religions?
Um, it kind of depends on what I'm looking to accomplish. If I need a little bit of luck, if I need a little bit of love, if I need someone to help me focus, I will pick and choose whomsoever that I would like to worship on that particular day based on those kinds of things. If I'm trying to help somebody heal, um, it really just kind of depends on what I'm looking to accomplish.
So do you find your inspiration in divination?
In part, yeah. So divination is the majority of my witch practice. Reading tea leaves, tarot cards in particular, and I do a bit of palm reading, and I'm trying to learn just as many different divination practices as I can, just because I really connect to that particular form of craft. And I've been doing it since I was 12, so quite a long time.
How do you come up with your ideas for designs? Like, what's the
um,
process?
Good question. I get my inspiration kind of from everywhere, really. Nature plays a huge part, films and music, and what I see around me. And nostalgia is also really big for me. Um, Memories from my childhood and just sort of remembering that time when things were very simple and you could just daydream all day long and come up with anything that your imagination wanted you to come up with and just have all these incredible stories. I think really I'm a storyteller more than anything else, and I really want to use knitting to tell stories and to do that through pattern making.
So do you remember your first design? Like, how did it happen and what was the process there?
My first design was one called the Lorax, and it didn't start out with a name, and it didn't really start out with a concept behind it. My mom had taught me how to knit, and we went to the local yarn shop and got some yarn, and it's basically just an incredibly long infinity scarf, and the whole thing is just knit in stripes of a few different colors. And I just wanted to have fun and experiment with color and just see how things worked and to see if I could remember even just how to cast on. And I didn't want it to be complicated. I just didn't want to have to think about it. I just kind of wanted to have fun with it. And then from there, I sort of started to modify other designers' patterns,
Mhm.
and I found that that really, really helped me understand construction and how things are meant to fit together and how things are meant to fit on a human body and how things fit from one body type to another. And, how color and style and texture kind of all work together to create something that looks a certain way. And I just became obsessed, and it just kind of grew from there. Yeah, I just can't stop designing.
Do you feel like you are the same way, like in different areas of your life, that you like when you start doing something, you becoming so into it that you need to know more and more and everything around it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I have a BFA in photography, and I was very much like that with photography for a very long time, and I still am to a certain extent. Where the idea behind like you can take a picture, but you can also make a picture, and I'm really interested in that idea and how things can be manipulated to where you're still telling the truth with the photograph, but you are skewing it so that it tells a specific story that you want to tell.
And that was my actually next question. So when I look at your Instagram profile, it's all very mystical, like it's almost like fairy tale. Like, how do you come up with the design, like the ideas of those photo shoots?
Sometimes I know right away what I want the photos to look like of how I want to present, whether it's my design or somebody else's pattern that I've made, because I also really enjoy making other people's patterns. I think there's something really wonderful about being able to support other designers and share their work through my profile. So sometimes I know exactly what it is that I want to do, and then other times I think, oh, I've driven by this forest, or I've driven by this wall that's covered in graffiti that's absolutely amazing and bright and colorful, or I've driven by this weird aqueduct bridge thing in the middle of nowhere, England, and like I'm going to use that at some point, and then eventually I make a pattern that fits that setting perfectly.
So sometimes the photography brings the idea of design. It's not necessarily that design brings the idea of how you're going to photograph it.
They're kind of linked in a lot of ways. Sometimes one comes first and then the other comes second. Sometimes they both happen simultaneously, where I think, oh, that's a really cool idea for a design, and I want to take photos here because I know that that will complement the design really well. Or sometimes the design will come first and then I'll be like, oh, where could I take photos of this thing that would look really beautiful and interesting?
Right. So you started your first design. What about the marketing part of it? Was that difficult?
Yeah, yeah. The marketing part is difficult. I don't want to constantly badger people to buy my patterns. I don't really feel like I know, you have to market yourself in order to sell your patterns, in order to sell anything that you're selling as a small business. Like you have to be able to market yourself and market yourself well. But I kind of want my work to speak for itself. And if somebody wants to make one of my patterns, amazing. And I'm super happy about that. But I don't want to constantly be enforcing the idea that they have to in order to support me, because there's so many ways to support artists that don't just include buying whatever it is that they're selling. So while I very much appreciate it because it helps me buy more yarn to make more designs, because that's pretty much the only way that I can continue designing right now, I do want it to be an organic growth process as well, I guess.
Right. Do you ever get frustrated with humanity for not getting you and not like jumping on your designs?
I did when I was young, because my designs are not mainstream. They're not the typical thing that people knit. They're a bit odd and strange and unusual and just full of fantasy and adventure. And that's really, I mean, that embodies who I am as a person. Is I'm very much in my head a lot of the time, and I'm constantly daydreaming. Even as a child, that's how I was. And I just kind of want to bring as many of those dreams to life and to reality as I can. And not everybody wants to go on that adventure, and that's okay. Like some people just want to knit the top down raglan sweater with 2 inches ribbing and like in a really pretty color, and I do that as well. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There's some very beautiful patterns like that. But for me personally, when it comes to designing, I get more joy out of flipping things on their head, and I know that not everybody wants to do that, which is fine. um, so I just hope that the people who are interested in doing something weird find me, I guess.
Do you find a lot of like very interesting people on Instagram, and do they inspire you in return?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I've met some of the most wonderful people through the online knitting community who have just been so encouraging and supportive. Even if they don't share the same sort of alternative aesthetic, they still can appreciate it and find beauty in it. And those people are just absolutely invaluable to me. Like I said, like I don't necessarily need to go viral. I would just like to make enough money to continue doing what I'm doing.
Do you test knit your patterns? Do you use tech editors for them? Do you just knit them yourself?
I do my own tech editing. Um, and hopefully I do not a horrible job at it. And I test knit absolutely everything. The first couple of patterns that I released, I didn't do any test knitting with. Um, but I find having that input and that feedback is really important to understanding how something fits people of all different shapes and sizes. How, you know, sometimes somebody may come up with an idea that I never would have thought about for how to construct something that actually works much better than the way that I've done it.
Right.
So having, you know, having eyes on the pattern to kind of give you a different way of looking at something is very much important to me. But that also kind of goes along with my whole fantasy, imagination, storytelling thing. Like everybody has stories to tell and everybody likes to tell stories. And by inviting people to tell those stories with you, you can kind of give them the freedom to explore in a way that maybe they wouldn't have before. And I've had a lot of people really enjoy that, I think. I hope.
Do you feel like your way of photographing yourself intimidates the testers because they don't know how to photograph things that they test to do justice to them?
I'm really not sure. I've not had anybody say that it's intimidating, so I hope that it's not. And I love almost all of the photos that I've received from testers have been absolutely gorgeous and amazing, whether or not it's just in their backyard or whether they've gone out on an adventure to look for somewhere fun to take photos. I think they like the things that people make with my patterns. It's just so much fun to see that. And I have considered doing a couple of photography courses, like maybe one in like finding settings or looking around your local area. Because there's, I mean, no matter where anybody lives, there's something amazing that they can, somewhere amazing they can go to take photos. And there's just so much available in the world to us that, like, you know, this it's just the limitless. It's just limitless.
I think
Um,
it's actually absolutely brilliant idea. And I know like a lot of people would probably love that kind of course, like specially designed for crafters, because it's one thing to like be, I mean, a lot of knitters are these solitary creatures. They sit on their sofa, they knit their thing. But for them to like take, first of all, a lot of people are uncomfortable with putting their face on the pictures, and a lot of people just don't know how to take picture. And so like lots of times I would see a very pretty shawl just thrown on the bed and like photograph at the strange angle, and it doesn't do any justice to the piece that they created, you know. So I think a lot of people would benefit from a course like that.
yeah, I would also like. I think I would also like to at some point do a photo editing course as well because I do quite a lot of photo editing on my photos. Like if there's, you know, a bunch of people in the background, I will absolutely Photoshop them out of the picture so it has a sort of more ethereal quality to it, like I'm the only person that's there.
Right.
Um, and I think there's easy ways to do that, especially with all of the apps available on phones and things now. Like you don't need, I mean, I personally use Photoshop, but you don't need Photoshop to do these things. So I've also thought about doing that maybe in the future.
I'll sign
Um,
up if you do it. I'd love to take that kind of class because it's like I always like feel like I'm running out of ideas of how to take a good picture, you know. So it's like that would be very helpful. um, who is your ideal tester? How do you find testers? And did you have any disasters with testers or any like amazing stories with testers?
um, almost all of the test knitters that have worked on my patterns with me have been absolutely incredible and had such really beautiful feedback and really taken the time and the effort to put into the pattern to make it as wonderful as it can be. And I mean, for a small time designer who can't afford to pay people to do that, um, it's just absolutely amazing. And the support that I've received from them is just like it's just so incredible. I at the moment I pretty much work on a first come first serve basis. So when I put a tester call out, I have a set number, you know, like if it's a scarf, I've got, you know, 10 slots open for that test to make it manageable. And the first 10 people in, those are the 10 people that get to do the test net. I just think it's fair to do it that way. For now, that's how I think it's the most fair. And I do want to be fair, but then, I've had a few people say, oh, well, what about like, if you're doing another one, can you please consider me? So then I'll put them on a list and then I'll contact them when I've got another pattern to test and be like, hey, I've got, this hat or these gloves or whatever it is, just to give them that opportunity if they wanted to test my patterns, because I do value everybody's time and I do want everybody to have an opportunity to get involved in the testing process or to make something, because a lot of time testers can't afford to buy patterns, so this is a way that they can make things that they really love without necessarily having to pay for them, and I want to support them if I can.
Have you ever had testers disappearing on you?
Pretty much every test knit. Pretty much every time. But I mean, I used to, the first couple times it happened, I got really upset and really frustrated and just like, oh, well, it's not like this is such a waste of energy and time on my end because, people have just received this pattern and now, they've just essentially just ghosted into thin air. But like, you can't do anything about other people. All you can do is trust and hope that they're going to show up and help. And if they don't, then they don't. And you just kind of, you remember that for next time if they ask to apply again. I've had most of the time, most people pull through and are absolutely incredible. And I could not be more appreciative or grateful for the people that have got helping me. So
Right.
I just focus on them.
So some of your patterns are very, I mean, I don't want to use the word mainstream, but like very easily sellable, let's say, like something that anybody can wear. And then there are some pattern like the little witch hat that has very specific audience in mind, I guess, or like very specific time of the year, perhaps for the rest. Um, do you ever think about like the commercial value of what you are about to design and what's going to bring more money? Do you stop yourself from designing what your fantasy feeds you versus what would actually sell?
I have battled with this so often. I cannot even tell you. It's such a tricky balancing act between making something available to everyone that everyone would feel comfortable wearing and making something that truly brings me joy. And I personally would just rather make the things that bring me joy. And if other people love them, then that's amazing. And if they don't, well, then I try again next time. And some things are more mainstream. Some, I've got, a couple of shawl patterns that, pretty much anybody could make and feel comfortable wearing, whether or not they're alternative or bohemian or whatever walk of life they come from, whatever style they prescribe to, however they like to dress themselves, they can make that work in their wardrobe. But then there's other ones that like maybe they are a bit more strange and unusual and just kind of a bit out there. But I think, there's I've received so many comments from people saying that they really appreciate that I go that route because there aren't very many patterns like that out there. So I guess I'm trying to bridge that gap.
Right. So you mentioned that your mom was the one who taught you how to knit. Does she knit your things, your designs, or what kind of things did she normally knit before you got into designing?
She really loves to make socks, which I do not, so it's wonderful. So when I need socks, I just ask my mom to make them because I'm not going to make them.
Right.
She hasn't knit any of my patterns yet. I think because she's intimidated by them. But she doesn't recognize how skilled and incredible that she is and how creative she is. So I'm kind of hoping that at some point I can convince her to just give it a shot and give it a try and see how it goes, because I'm sure she could do it. I mean, she's been knitting for a lot longer than I have, that's for sure. She makes a lot of blankets and wraps and really lovely things out of luxurious fibers, and she's very, very talented, and I just wish she would see that in herself.
Do you find that in a lot of knitters? Because I meet it all the time. Like I would post a picture of some shawl that I made on like one of the Facebook groups, let's say. And it would be like very simple lace. Like I'm not talking about the most difficult shawls that I've done. I'm talking about something simple, right? But with a little lace. And the comments would be, oh, I wish I knew how to make lace, or like this is my life goals, and I just need socks mostly. And that's sort of, I don't want to say frustrates me, but it surprises me because I only learned how to knit 4 years ago, and I only knitted my first pair of socks last week. So I feel like anybody who knows how to knit and purl can knit lace. Like there is nothing that stops them from trying anything else. Like any shape, any like the sweaters, the shawls, whatever. There's like nothing you cannot make with proper instructions and basic knowledge of basic stitches. It's sort of like playing piano. Like if you know there is 8 notes, if you know those 8 notes, you can play piano. Like you just have, it's a matter of practice, it's a matter of spending time on it and like improving your skills. And I often also find that people say, oh, I don't know how to read charts. And it's the same thing because it's literally like 8 symbols. So if you know those 8 symbols, you can read lace, like you can read the charts, right? Do you find that difficult with people, with knitters out there? And how do you deal with that in your patterns?
A lot of my patterns approach more challenging stitches and techniques in a kind of build up sort of way. So I want to make more complicated designs because I think it's fun and it's fun for me and it's a challenge for me. But I also want to make them in a way where they're not as intimidating if I can. So if I've got color work in something, maybe it'll just be like a small amount of color work. Or if I have lace in something, maybe it will be an easily repeatable pattern to get somebody used to the idea of doing lace so that later on they'll feel more comfortable doing something that's a little bit more intricate. Personally, I think every knitter can make anything they want to make. And what's so wonderful and so amazing about knitting is if you mess up, you just rip that sucker out. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. Like it's not like sewing where once you cut the fabric, that is it. And if you've cut it incorrectly, well, that's the end of that fabric. Like you have infinite opportunities and infinite chances to get it right. And I think that's the really beautiful thing about knitting and what keeps me obsessed with it is that there's always something new to learn and there's always somewhere to grow with it and there's always a chance to fix a mistake. And I mean, how many times in life can you fix your mistakes? It's kind of magical.
Right. And it's funny because I was talking to Suzanne Bryan. So Suzanne has a huge YouTube channel where she shows all the tutorials. She's a certified hand master knitter, and she does all these tutorials of like different stitches and different tips and tricks on how to improve your knitting. And she told me this thing, which I found absolutely brilliant. She said, I give my students expensive merino wool, and then they go to the yarn store and they complain about the cost of that wool. And I say, well, think about it this way. If you go to a movie theater, you spend hour and a half, 2 hours, and you spend like $15 and that's it. Like that's the end of that entertainment. But if you bought $25 skein of yarn and you came home and it took you 30 hours to knit it, you got 30 hours of entertainment for that $25. And then if something goes wrong, you rip it off and then you got twice the entertainment for the price of the same skein. And I absolutely love that. I thought it was like,
I love that. Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
No, it was like absolutely brilliant. I was like, I'm gonna use that now from now on to explain myself. All my mistakes is just doubling the amount of entertainment per square inch of that knitting, you know.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it.
Right. So what are you working on now? Like what's going on right now in your design process?
I've just finished a design in collaboration with Wonderland Yarns, which I'm really, really excited about. I took the photos this week, so I'll be editing them and sharing them next week. So I might have a few previews and sneak peeks on my Instagram this week just to give you an idea of what's on the way. That's part of the knitting book that I've decided to write, which is probably a bigger undertaking than maybe I should be doing right now, but I got really inspired to do it, so I'm just gonna go for it. And if I fall flat on my face, well, at least I tried.
I love that.
But, it's called Through the Knitting Glass: Patterns Inspired by Alice in Wonderland. And every pattern in the book, there will be 18 patterns, and every pattern will be a different character or something special from the book that really sticks out to me and really means a lot to me. It's my favorite book probably of all time, definitely from my childhood. So I really hope I can do it justice and do some wonderful things with it. There will be a lot of different stuff in it, shawls and gloves and hats and maybe a sweater or two. So there'll be, a lot of different projects for different experience levels for knitters. So even if you're a beginner or advanced, there will be something in this collection for you to have fun with.
Well, I can't wait to see those pictures. That must be like something unbelievable.
Yeah, so this collaboration with Wonderland Yarns is the second pattern for the book. I'm not going to tell you what character it is yet, but I'm really excited about it. And I hope people like it. And then I've got a few other collaborations coming up with Fuzzy Whatnots and with Stitch Noir Fibers and also with Enchanted Yarn. So I'm really excited about those as well. I really, really like working with small independent dyers because I think we're all kind of in the same boat where we're trying to build our businesses and we're all basically starting from the bottom up and we're all doing it all ourselves, and so if we can all kind of help each other get there along the way, I think that's really wonderful. And if I can help people sell some yarn, then all the better. I just think there's so many incredible, amazing, talented people in this community, and if I can do something to help them, then I will absolutely do it.
Right. So what's knitting for you, like, is in terms of socializing? Like, is that something you like to do with other people? Do you do some sort of like festivals, knit nights, Zoom nights, anything, or is it something you do home by yourself?
So I pretty much knit by myself. I've done a few virtual knit nights with some people. Bevan of Gorse Knits hosts a really good full moon knitting circle that I've really enjoyed. And I have knitted, with some other people as well. But I find that I do a lot less knitting and a lot more chatting.
Right.
So I don't really get anything done in terms of my work. So for me, like, as much as it is an enjoyable craft for me, it is also work, because it is my only job at the moment. So I do have deadlines and things that I need to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. So most of the time it's me and Netflix.
Right. Is that self-imposed deadlines, or do you have like hard deadlines from other sources?
My personal self-imposed deadlines is I want to release a pattern every month, and that's a workload that I can handle and that continues helping me progress with my business and with my design work and really just improving. Like, I feel like every design I create, I have learned something new and grown a little bit and figured out other ways to do things that are a little bit more interesting or advanced or elegant or whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish. Like, I feel like there's a lot of forward moving motion that way when I'm constantly working on something new, and I really value that. But at the same time, my brain also needs a break. So I like to knit other people's patterns as a way to have that rest and that time just for me to just enjoy the craft of knitting without having to worry about how it relates to work and whether or not this pattern is going to make money and whether or not this or this or this. Like, I can just have fun with it and just kind of like turn my brain off and just knit. So I feel like that's really important as well. And then when it comes to like collaborations, because I have had so many this year, because so many incredible dyers have trusted me with their yarn, which is just, quite frankly, a little bit intimidating. And like, I really hope that I'm making these people some money and that I'm not totally destroying everything in the process. I want to make sure that I give those projects a priority and that they are getting done in a timely fashion, and that I am promoting this yarn and making sure that people are seeing it and valuing it and understanding like why it's so beautiful and what is so unique about each of these yarn dyers. And I think that's really important that a lot of people maybe don't see on a day-to-day basis when you're just scrolling through Instagram and you're going past, 17 photos of a blue yarn. Like, you don't really stop to notice all the intricate details. So when I can take a photo of a particular colorway and point out, oh, look at this subtle thing that's happening here, or look how this looks like watercolor, or look how solid and perfect this tonal came out, and how difficult that is for somebody to do by hand. I think that is really an amazing thing, to be able to just stop and really look at what it is that you're working with, because I think the materials are just, I mean, without the yarn, we don't make things. So
Do you have a favorite fiber that you always like gravitate towards?
Um, I use wool about 110%. I started with a lot of acrylic and acrylic blends because it's what I could afford, and I wanted to design, and I wanted to get going with things and make things. That's what I could afford at the time. But then, these yarn dyers really trusted me with like these really beautiful, amazing yarns. And up until I started doing these collaborations, I didn't really understand the difference between mass manufactured yarn and hand dyed yarn, and why they're so special. And now that I know, I'm pretty much completely addicted and obsessed. So every single dollar I make from my patterns goes into helping to support independent dyers whenever I possibly can. If I'm making a project that's just for myself and it's not for my design work, I probably won't always use hand dyed yarn. A lot of times I'll use, whatever I found on Lovecrafts or wherever. But I find value in that as well. Like, I think there are some really, really nice commercially made yarns that are still 100% wool or merino wool. And now I'm off on a tangent because you've asked me what kind of yarn I like working with. But yeah, I love wool. I think there's something really magical about it. And I love wool that has cashmere in it in particular. That's my favorite. I don't get to work with it very often because it's very expensive, but I would say that's probably my favorite. I really love linen blends and yarn that has bamboo in it. And I have a yarn at the moment that's got nettle fibers in it, which I'm really intrigued by. I haven't worked with it yet, but I'm really excited to start playing around with that because it's surprisingly soft considering that it's made out of stinging nettles. Like, you wouldn't
Right.
expect like like this squishy fiber to come from this like spiky, painful plant that just
Right.
wants to hurt you all the time. But yet here it is, and it's beautiful and amazing. So I really, yeah, I like blend yarns. I like 100% wool yarns. I've definitely used sock yarn with nylon in it because there's an elasticity to it and a durability to it that is really nice. So a lot of it just depends on the project as well, and what I'm working on and what I'm making. And yeah, there's so much that goes into it, and I'm constantly learning more. Like, I'm by no means a fiber expert in any way. I'm just trying to absorb the information as much as I can.
Do you find your life in UK different from America? In like, was the knitting your sort of coming back home, like keeping the connection for you?
That's a good question. I don't really know how to answer that. So when my coming back to the UK, my knitting has exploded about 1,000%. I was never this concentrated on it or this obsessed with it or this. It was definitely more of a hobby for me. And then when my husband and I came back from the UK, we were working in Malawi at a lodge, managing a lodge. And the pandemic happened. I'm sure this is a very familiar story. Lots of people have sort of like come into this community through the COVID situation and everything. And we had to come back to the UK about a year and a half earlier than we were planning to. And in order to sort of set up all my visa stuff, like, I wasn't allowed to work at the time, but I wanted to see if there was anything I could do online to make money, because that doesn't violate the rules. Especially, I mean, especially at the time, I wasn't really making any money at all. I was just doing it and hoping that like something would happen with
Right.
it. Um, And so I just like sort of just jumped off the deep end and into the knitting community and just hoped for the best. And the feedback and friendships and support has just been absolutely overwhelming. I still can't believe that almost 2,000 people are interested in my weird crafting adventures, but you know, it's just incredible. It's just incredible. So I'm at the point where my visa's been approved now. I can work in the UK if I choose to. But Joel and I live in a tiny one street town in Somerset, and there are not a lot of job opportunities for me here. And to be honest, I'm kind of at the age where I don't just want to have a job. I want to build a career doing something that I really love.
Right.
Um, and I'm really hoping that that knitting will be that thing.
Right. How is your husband dealing with you knitting all the time? Like, is there ever, like, can you just take a break from knitting? Can we do this or that kind of thing?
He's very, very supportive. He helps me take my pictures and helps me. I mean, it's a mission taking these pictures, and he's just been absolutely so helpful in helping me get the shots that I'm looking for and finding these like settings and locations. And he's really involved in that way. And he's always so supportive. Like he gets excited with me when I have a pattern sale. And he wants me to succeed. We do have an agreement that on his days off from work, I also take days off from knitting, and I think that's working really well because it allows us to get out of the house and just to have a break and not be burnt out. And we've just moved into a new house, and we basically had absolutely no furniture, so we had to run around the last month or two trying to collect all of these things so that we can actually, live in the UK comfortably and in a home that, has a bookshelf and like a bed
And a chair.
on a chair and just like basic things, that you don't really think about until you are in an empty house with no furniture.
Right.
um but he's so supportive and encouraging, and we never have fights about like me buying too much yarn or anything like that. I mean, I only buy yarn if I have a project in mind for it because I can't afford to do it any other way. And even if I did, I don't think I would be one of those obsessive collectors of yarn because it would
Right.
just be overwhelming for me to have so much. Like I wouldn't be able to make a decision about what to make and what to use, and like it would just, yeah, it would just be me sitting in a giant pile of yarn thinking and not doing anything.
It's
And
funny because like there are people who get inspired by the wall of yarn. Like this is what drives their imagination, and then there are people who get absolutely distracted by that. Like it's not one way or another. I noticed that.
no,
Um,
and neither of those things are bad. If you love to collect yarn and you have a giant wall of yarn, I think that's amazing, and I want to look at it, and I want you to talk about it, and I want to live vicariously through you. But for me, I come up with the idea first most of the time and then choose the yarn for the idea that I think will work best for that concept. Once in a while, there will be a yarn, and I'm like, I know what I'm gonna do with that. Like I did get a hold of a skein from Sock Obsessions. That's this like lime green into these really dark purples that I'm gonna use for my book. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I know what character that's for. I know what I'm making. This is amazing. I'm excited. Okay, you can have my money. I'm not broke for the next 2 weeks, and I don't care.
Love it. Do you have colors that you always gravitate toward?
I would say I knit with probably 5 colors. And then once in a while, I will knit with something that's not that color. So this book has actually been quite a challenge trying to find things that like I personally would not normally knit with or wear, but I know other people would enjoy seeing, or it suits the concept. Like I want to do a pattern for the talking garden and that scene in the Disney cartoon where Alice is talking to all the flowers and they're all grumpy, and I really want to do something, but I feel like pinks and greens together are a really good embodiment of that part of the story, and those are not colors that I would normally choose, especially not together, but I think for that it's appropriate and will look really really fun and could maybe help me fall in love with pink a little bit more because I don't really use a lot of pink. But I pretty much stick to purple and black and red and coppery dark oranges and mustard, maybe a little bit of olive, and that's probably about it. Especially when I make other people's patterns, it's pretty much 5 colors, some gray maybe.
Funny. I mean, I really can't wait to see that book because it sounds really interesting and exciting. So I'm gonna be there rooting for you for your journey. I hope
I
it's
have no
gonna come
idea how I'm
out
going to
soon.
publish it, or if anyone's going to be even interested in publishing it, or if it's just going to be 18 Alice in Wonderland patterns on Ravelry and Etsy, and if you like them, you like them. I haven't really gotten that far with it yet.
Right.
But I'm just gonna make the patterns and see what happens.
It sounds like a wonderful journey. I hope you enjoy it and I hope it's a success. Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I
Thank you
really,
so much
really
for
enjoyed
having
our
me.
chat. Yeah. And, best of luck with your book.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll be chatting in the future because
I
I really enjoy getting to know you as well.
thank you.